A while ago I made a video about the sound novel genre. Now I thought I'd make one about the premier sound novel game, Kamaitachi no Yoru. In the official fan book there's a lot of behind the scenes information, and I also got some myself by going to the actual hotel where the game takes place and was photographed. In game the name of the hotel is Shipuru, which is katakana for spur, but the real place is called Knulp, and it's run by the Aikawas, Koichi and Kayo. The name Knulp is taken from a 1915 Hermann Hesse novel of the same name. Koichi got a loan to build the hotel back in the 80s during the Japanese economic bubble period, when it was quite easy to get loans. It was completed and opened in 1989, a little surprisingly I'd say, as it looks quite a bit older. Credit to the builders, I guess. The real-life location and game share the entrance and lobby with couches, dining room, the second floor with rooms, and probably the owner's quarters, although I didn't see it on my visit. The game also has a wine cellar, which doesn't exist in the real house. The game creators did a miniature instead. The view from the entrance with the railing was real, but the railing is no longer there. It broke some time ago and was removed. The two separate cottages behind the house weren't utilized in the game, nor is the kitchen. The little reception window isn't used anymore now and doesn't have that telephone. Where the villain stages the window in his room to be broken, the characters don't see this, but in the finished game anyway they deduce how it was done, and that is the only part with pixel graphics instead of digitized photos. They were going to do it for real. Koichi recalls giving permission for them to break his window, and how it was very cold there during the filming, so to speak, but in the end it wasn't used. When he was approached by Chunsoft with the idea, he was given a Super Famicom and their only previous game, Otogiri So, so that he could get an idea of what it was going to be, and he liked the game a lot and thought it was scary. However, after Kamaitachi no Yoru's completion, he got a copy of that game too, but didn't find it scary at all. Because it was set in his own house, there were no surprises. The house seen on the box art is not Knulp, it's some other building somewhere. The TV drama from 2002 was set in a different place, but the characters meet outside of Knulp for the house to make a cameo. Now for some words from the development team that I've translated from the book. After Otogiri So finished, I thought we'd do mystery next. Since it's a game where the story branches due to choices, having the player look for the right solution seemed like the right thing to do. Even if we'd end up not making a third or fourth game after this, I at least wanted to get a game like this one done. I was very happy with the work Abiko-san did. After reading some of his novels, we got to talking about how real photos would serve his story well, and that's what we did. The silhouettes came later. The sound novel is all about evocation, and while thinking about how to support that, Abiko-san suggested silhouettes of the characters, and that's how that started. Abiko-san started writing the story in September 2 years ago. Completing it took about 2.5 years, but it was very well done and I'm happy with it. Director Asano captured the scariness and harshness that Abiko-san conveys in his story well. This game turned out even deeper than Otogiri So. Not only the game, but with the drama CD and this book, it's like the world of Kamaitachi no Yoru engrosses you the more you get into it, and there's always something more to discover. Our background was making RPGs, and on top of that, this was our first time programming for the Super Famicom. So because of that, the preliminary preparations were difficult. I'd like to bring attention to the snow effect. We couldn't have made that on other hardware. When I was tired, I would look at that screen and think, let's go skiing, while continuing my work. Also, we put a lot of work into the pictures of this game. Even though the sound novel genre is a novel with sound, the pictures were our top priorities. We worked hard to make it so that the pictures convey the images that the writer imagined for the players, and a good sense of presence. It was all new stuff to me, and I got scolded a lot. My main responsibility was to ask and write down the opinions of everyone at the production meetings and turn it into feedback for the creation process. Over the course of making the game, there were several times where I had to redo things that we had already done, and I got frustrated with that frequently. Two things that I think impressed the players in this game was the text rereading and the chapter replaying functions. Actually, those were created for internal use during development. They weren't planned to be in the game from the start. During production, Nakamura suggested that we keep it in the game, and we did. I did most of the shadows, by tracing character sketches. The hardest part was the part where they walk stealthily up the stairs, but scenes where several people overlapped each other was also difficult, trying to avoid making it look like there was a purple lump on the screen. Sometimes I wouldn't be sure if a character was facing forwards or backwards. There was a lot of trial and error. 6 people handled the graphics on this game. I did a lot of work on the backgrounds. It wasn't like we could just put in the photographs as is. We put them in as black and white, then added color from the Super Famicom's color palette afterward. That was hard. Because we couldn't throw red paint around in the hotel, we also did that afterwards. The dismembered body was a doll, and the staff filled in for other dead bodies. Actually, I was Koyama's corpse. Because Kayama was supposed to have a beard, I put one on too. That's one photo I'll never show to my friends. When you see that in the game, please think of me. I worked hard making the sounds in the game sound real and natural, but it was a lot of work. For example, making sure the wind sound didn't take over the whole thing. We had to create a real sounding wind sound, and we put a lot of effort into that. On this game I enjoyed making strange stuff. I would sit in the meeting room sucking the back of my hand to make a sound effect, making Kayama's theme and other stuff. I spent the whole day recording screaming sounds. It was creepy. This game was my first time composing songs, and I did about 20, probably less. I also made the curtain sound, which was difficult to create a loop for. I didn't know if it was going to work, but it made a good sound in the end. Now for the writer Takimaru Abiko's look back at the creation process. When I was in elementary school, there was a TV show called Kaiki Daisaksen, and there was an episode called Kamaitachi. That's where I got the title from. In that episode, people were dismembered by something mysterious, and it was really scary. That show was the first time I heard of it. Later on, before my official debut as an author, I wrote a story also called Kamaitachi no Yoru. Of course the contents were completely different and it was never published, but I've had a fascination with the word Kamaitachi ever since. Chunsoft selected a few writers and sent Super Famicoms with Otogiriso to them and asked for impressions, and I was one of those. Otogiriso came out in March and I was playing it in April and May, and in the survey I said that I'm playing it, and I also said that I've known about Chunsoft since Door Door, and Nakamura-san liked that. In July they came to see me in Kyoto, and they noticed how knowledgeable in games I was, and they were like, let's do it. Playing Otogiriso, I felt like it was the first time a game came along that was very close to what I do. There was more text in that than other adventure games up to that point, and as I was playing the game I was thinking, here's how I would do it, and so on. Also the added sound was very fun to experience for me as a writer. From when I first got the call from the Chunsoft people, I had a feeling I would end up doing it, but I didn't think I was going to write all of it myself at first. Maybe I would participate as an advisor, proofreader, or maybe part of the scenario writing team. I thought I could take a relaxed approach to the project, but that didn't happen. I worked with Chunsoft for the better part of 2 years. I worked at their Tokyo office for a while. It was about the end of last year and beginning of this year. We all worked packed together and doing long days. My hotel was 5 minutes from the office. I would go to work around 11 and have lunch with the others, then work until evening and then go back to the hotel. During the debug stage, I as the writer had to be at hand all the time in order to fix any inconsistencies with the branching paths in the game. Because there fits fewer characters on a game screen than on the page of a book, the rhythm of the story is different. Especially the spoken lines have to fit on one screen. There fits less characters on a game screen, but the sense of flipping pages is still similar. When people have long conversations, they don't take breaks, right? We have to make sure that there's no dead time, because some people aren't used to reading books, and if there's a lot of reading to do without the scene changing, that's bad. Even though the game is not as long as a book, it's more dense with information. Keeping in mind that people who don't read mystery novels will also play the game, I decided to keep it orthodox, limit the number of characters, and put them in an enclosed environment. It's a circumstance that's easy to put yourself into, and the main pair of characters are a young guy and girl just like in Otogiriso. From that I decided on the snowy mountain pension setting. In the beginning the actual place was undecided, but because people from all over Japan would be playing the game, I wanted to set it in a really familiar place. So I thought of a place in the middle of Japan where both Kansai and Kanto people would go, and that was the Nagano area. And if it was going to be Nagano, then why not Hakuba? In February of this year, the team at Chunsoft all went to the real pension in Hakuba for location scouting. But for me at that time, the plot of the game was all mapped out, and I didn't contribute much. Skiing was a lot of fun though. The best part of the game to me was the sound, music and sound effects, etc. When the game gets exciting, the sound gets exciting, and of course there's no sound at all in a novel book. Image is something you can leave up to people's imagination to a degree, but that's not the case with sound. Even with very little images or story, you can force someone to feel something with sound, which I think is a lucky thing both as a player and a writer. It was my idea to go with silhouettes for this game. They didn't show the people in Otogiriso, but with more than 10 characters that wasn't going to be feasible here. Having a bunch of people talking to each other in the lounge without seeing anything would look stupid. I said, what about using shadows? I wasn't going to ask them to move them, but they worked hard and made it so that each character's characteristics were discernible in their respective silhouettes. They even did movement after all, like the running cat, and their hard work is visible in the game. We put a lot of extra scenarios into the game. For example, a spy scenario, where there was a snowmobile battle like something out of a 007 movie. Because the setting was a snowy mountain, I definitely wanted that in there. Conveying a sense of speed and excitement was difficult, of course, but the team did their best. There were also occult, sexy and RPG-like scenarios, definitely packed with variety. Something I couldn't get in there was an idea where the killer was a psycho like in Friday the 13th. But since the main storyline pretty much ended up in that kind of bloody mess anyway, we figured we might as well skip it. I've liked PC adventure games for a long time, but in earlier adventure games like that, there wasn't much need for deduction. As long as you tried every command multiple times, you would eventually solve it, and I think that's wrong. In Kamaitachi no Yoru, you get propelled forward by the choices you make. People who can solve the mystery solve it, but the people who can't get repelled. Sound novels are a part of the adventure game category, but if they can become their own genre, that would be great. But more games have to be made for that to happen, as a genre becomes defined through competition. We did good work on this game. Chief Nakamura said, let's do it again sometime, and I have some more ideas on what that could be. But I don't think I'll do another sound novel, as almost all I wanted to do I got to do on this project. There are also things that we can't do within this genre, or maybe it is what computers can't do. For the future, I'm thinking about what could only be done with computers. Something that on the surface looks like a sound novel, but with a completely different system. Whether that's possible to do or not, I'll get back to you on that. For the advertising campaign, Chunsoft had a commercial made that starred Japanese actor Raita Ryu, whose work Koichi Nakamura was a fan of. He plays a police detective who tries to solve the case, but can't because it's too difficult. But it turns out he's just playing the game. This was his first commercial, and as a result, he was later cast in Chunsoft's next sound novel, Machi. Unfortunately, the commercial doesn't seem to be available on the internet anywhere. So, I made a recreation of it for you to enjoy. Kamaitachi no Yoru. Get it before it gets you. Chunsoft. To go along with the commercial, they also did magazine ads in 3 stages. And the PlayStation version of the game later got its own commercial.
おじいちゃん怖いものないの？
この年になると怖いものなどないよ。
じゃあこれやろ。
いやじ
欲しい欲しい。かまいたちの夜。おじいちゃん。
ゃ。いやじゃ。PlayStation.
Audio dramas, despite having gone out of style decades ago in the West, are still pretty big in Japan, and many anime and games get them, as was the case with Kamaitachi no Yoru. The book states that the recording of it took about 6 hours, and that the recording studio was pretty packed, having all 13 actors there at the same time. Here's a sample of the voice actors included. As transcribing spoken Japanese is a bit of a nightmare for me, I've got no plans in translating the whole thing, but here's at least a short excerpt.
みどりちゃん、1号室のお客さんは？それが食事はいらないって出てこないんです、田中さん。そう。それじゃ後から何か持ってってあげようかしら。あのお客さん、なんか変じゃありませんか？スキーをやりに来たようでもないし、大事そうにカバンなんか抱えて、何か怯えているようで、一体何が入っているのかしら、あのカバン。
確かにここに来てから部屋に入ったきりだし、なんか犯罪の匂いが。
どんな？
例えばあの黒いカバンの中にはブルセラで買った女子高生のパンティがいっぱい詰まっていたりして。
こら、他のお客さんに聞こえるぞ。
でも挙動不審って感じですよ。
The next best thing to learning Japanese and playing the game would be watching the Game Center CX episode on the game, which I'll link to in the description. But in another episode, they also had a segment where they read aloud dialogue from one of the extra scenarios.
わしは構いや。大阪でちっこい会社やっとるんや。
え、
おじさん、かまいって言うんですか？驚いたな。僕もかまいって言うんですよ。字が違いますけどね。かまいって言います。釜井徹です。
実は私も釜井で。
ノルウェーから来ましたのよるカーマイです。
談話室に集まってきた人がことごとくカマイという名前。挙句の果てには外国人の名前も。
ノルウェーから来ましたのよるカーマイです。
このゲーム知ってますか？
知らないです。
かまいたちの夜じゃないですか。
かまいたちの夜ですよね、タイトル。はい、
かまいたちの夜っていう。
ああ、そうなんですね。
はい。
でもまた中山さんのノルウェーから来た
一人だけカーマイやな。
カーマイですよ。ちょっとなんかやっぱりしっくりこない
しっくりこないですか？顔がちょっと緑色になってくるからじゃないですか。顔色悪いな。ちょっと
顔色悪いから心配。
Phew! That was a lot of information regarding a game for which the word niche is almost an understatement for, wasn't it? Anyway, I'm always happy to provide some information, however few people will actually enjoy it.